Yasmin Kadu here, your Dearborn Girl poster child that loves all things social justice and is a lifelong learner. And today we have the pleasure of speaking to Huda Fahmy, lover of comic books, Sunday funnies, who also loves being a mom and speaking her truth. Hi, Huda.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being on. So, Huda, our season 2 theme is never sleep on a Dearborn girl. And when you hear that line, what does that mean to you?
To me, that means never doubt what a Dearborn girl is capable of, because she's absolutely capable of anything she sets her mind to. So, yeah, never sleep on a Dearborn girl. Don't turn your back on her. Don't doubt her. Yeah.
We couldn't agree more. And so one of the reasons why we were so excited to have you on the show is because you have this amazing Instagram account called Yes, I'm Hot in This. So can you tell us where you came up with the name from?
Sure, yeah. It is definitely a double entendre. There is the question I get asked maybe the most often is because of my hijab, aren't you hot in that? And I used to always kind of give excuses like, no, actually I'm much cooler than you, and did you know that when the body is hot it has a natural cooling mechanism and you sweat? And I go through this really long convoluted answer to be like, no, actually I'm not that hot. And then I grew up and I was like, why do I keep doing that? Why do I keep trying to appease people and make me, like, my life comfortable for them and give them an answer that I would feel like would comfort them? And so in the end, it was just, anytime I get asked that again, I would just be like, yeah, I'm hot. It's like 102 degrees. We are all hot. If you are not hot, you should be worried there is something wrong. And so it kind of, on one hand, is supposed to represent, like, the confidence that I have to just be upfront and, like, I own this. I wear this for my reasons. Yes, I'm hot, but that's still, thing. And then it also, again, that second meaning of, I'm hot. I am hot. I'm confident in who I am. I'm confident in the way I dress. And I think I look good, and I think I am good. So that's where I get that the title.
That's awesome. So your title is super powerful and kind of matches your super powerful platform. Can you tell our listeners kind of about your Instagram and what your inspiration for even starting your account and your book too, which I'm lucky enough to have had you sign the other day, and she put to Yasmin Stay Hot.
That's right.
Very exciting.
It started in 2017, almost immediately after the 2016 presidential elections, and the Muslim ban was happening, and there were a lot of people who were they had so many opinions, and there was so much more media on Muslims, and a lot of it was just not representative of who I was as a Muslim. And this is something that, it's not new. It's been this way for, God, as long as I could remember. And I had just left work because I'd had my son. And so I had all this, between naps and while feeding him. And, it was just a lot more time than I was used to having. And so I was also filled with anxiety and stress about the situation that was going on. And social media really does give you everything that's happening in real time. And so that didn't help, seeing these and hearing these people who suddenly, the volume on their hate was just turned up to the max. And so, just walking outside in my hijab in Texas became a lot more full of anxiety. And I needed something to kind of get that anxiety out. And I've always kind of been a funny person. I identify anyway as a funny person. And I always see things that happen through the lens of humor. And I've loved Sunday funnies and comics since I was a kid. And with the encouragement of my family, my older sister, I started just kind of chronicling these things and these scenarios and things that, usually cause me anxiety. I started turning them into comics and posting them online, hoping that maybe people could see who we are as Muslims, as hijabis. I know like I said, I'm rambling. I just keep
rambling.
Totally.
Your story is really interesting too, because I'm sure people see you all the time on Instagram too, and see your comics, and they're really funny, but they're also very, very powerful too. And just hearing kind of you walk us through your journey is something that I know I'm particularly interested in hearing about. So for me, when I see you on Instagram, I look at everything as like a political satire. So yeah. What has the reception with that been?
Definitely positive. Alhamdulillah. It's, in the beginning it was, there would be a lot of hate messages, private messages. Some people created a whole subreddit about my comics and sent like a bunch of haters to my account, and they would spam my lives and they would spam my comment section, and it was really, really frustrating. And I finally had to set up, censor the comments, and I stopped reading them altogether, and you could only comment if you followed me, and I would just not read the direct messages most of the time. And eventually that kind of tapered out, and I didn't see it as much. And I also have my husband, who's kind of my filter. He reads my messages and my comments. If there are important ones or nice ones he really wants me to respond to, that's how we work together on that. So in the beginning it was a little bit harder, but it only served to like make me do it. Like, I'm going to do it even more. Like, I'm going to post every day now. And so in that sense, it was like, in your face, I'm going to do this. And now it's just this outpouring of solidarity and support, and people who I never thought would ever relate, who are messaging to tell me that this is so relatable and thank you. And I'm not Muslim. I'm like, they'll be like, I'm Jewish, or I'm atheist, or I'm from the LGBTQ community, and they all find something that they can relate to in the comics. And I think just feeling like seeing somebody who is marginalized or has felt marginalized their whole life, and then kind of try to bust out of the margin and tell their story and be proud of it. I think it's definitely something that I didn't expect to be as to be. I didn't think it was going to be like this at all.
So you don't write from the lens of being universal then? No,
and though I can't deny it, like we have our unique stories, but really it is such a universal message. But it's something that I didn't know about. I didn't realize just how universal until I started writing about this, because it really does. It is something that we all share. Nobody likes to be the outsider, and nobody wants to change in order to be accepted. I don't want to, assimilate. I just want to live my life and just let me be. And and I think that's just, resonates with a lot of people.
So when people are reading your comics, what is the main message you want them to take away from it?
So the main message I want people to take away is that Muslims are not a monolith, that I am not telling the Muslim story, I'm telling a Muslim story. And just because I do certain things one way does not mean all Muslims do this. Like, for example, I don't shake hands with men, and I don't like sitting alone with men. And a lot of, there are a lot of Muslim women who don't care about that. And that's between them and God. And to me, it's like, that's one thing I want people to know for sure. It's just because that's what I do, and that's how I choose to live. It does not mean I'm better than anybody else. And it does not mean that it's a generalization that should be made about Muslims. And that's just one tiny example. But, there are so many, I think that's a problem, is that people generalize so many things about Muslims, and not just about Muslims, but about anybody that's different. And I think taking that as a lesson for anything in life is that just because you read one story about one certain group of people should not be taken to generalize an entire group, the entire group. So that's kind of the message that I hope people take away from my books, my comics.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest problem with the Arab American, Muslim American voice is that we don't have diverse representation. So it's the danger of a single story every single day, where there's one story that's being put forth in the media, and then if we don't have the counterforce to that with like platforms like yours, then we won't have diversity of stories. And so I think when I think about your platform too, we see all the positives that you bring to the table, but what effects has growing your platform been for you on a personal basis?
So on a personal level, it's definitely affected my mental health. It's definitely something that I've always had these kind of issues, but I kept them under control. But after kind of putting my feelings, my anxiety, my personality, my life out there, really it is very much unfiltered. What you see is what you get. And it's such a vulnerable thing to do. And so it makes me a little bit raw. And so I've had to, I've definitely scheduled times with a therapist, and we've talked about it, and we've, and it's brought up a lot of issues that were underlying, no idea. And I feel like it's definitely made me a stronger person. And so it's, again, just one of those things that I didn't expect to happen from this, but now that I think about it, I think it just makes sense that when you put yourself out there, and it's such raw, vulnerable emotions, and it's all my anxieties, and I think it was naive of me to not to not realize that this was eventually going to happen, is that I need somebody to talk to about all this, to really kind of just organize my thoughts and all of that. So, luckily I have a really supportive husband, and who kind of just pushes me to kind of talk to somebody about it. And alhamdulillah, I'm just really, really grateful for him and for my therapist and my family for being so supportive. Yeah.
So what advice do you have for any young Arab American, Muslim American woman that's listening that wants to grow a platform, or that's very interested in media or art or anything of the sort?
I guess the advice that I would give is don't wait for everything, like for all your ducks to line up in a row. Don't wait for everything to be perfect. I'm going to tell you, for example, my husband wanted to start his own YouTube channel, and he wanted to get the lighting equipment. He wanted to get like a $600 camera. He wanted to make sure he had all this. And I'm like, do you even know what you're going to talk about? He's like, I was like, why don't you just write out a bullet point script, kind of just really, and just kind of see if you can do it with your phone camera. See if you can just do one video and commit to that one video. And long story short, we have a $600 paperweight sitting at home.
Oh my God.
He bought this camera and he never did anything with it. And it was, and I guess like in the end, just don't wait for things to be perfect. You don't have to have all the best equipment and all the best things. It's just, if you have this idea, start with what you have. I started drawing with a pencil, pen, paper. I would scan it onto an old-timey scanner and upload it onto my computer and just put that on the internet. And it was stick figures. I had no idea how to draw. I didn't know how to do anything digital. But I didn't want to wait. I didn't want to wait because if I did, then I might have just overthought it and just completely, so don't be scared of being perfect. Don't be scared of what other people will think. You have a story. You have a voice. It's unique to you. And you have every right to tell it. You have every right to tell it. And all I can think about is that stupid Netflix movie, The Tall Girl. I don't know if you've
No.
For God's sake, what? There are people who are making these stupid movies that, and you probably, whoever's listening, you probably have more, not even probably, 100% have every right to tell your story if there are dumb movies like that being made and people.
No, I mean,
so
that's
mad
real.
that this movie even got made. I'm just like, are you kidding me?
So wait, tell us a little bit about, or what is the premise of the movie, or it's just irrelevant?
I mean, she just feels marginalized because she's a tall girl. That's literally the movie, and she can't find I don't know.
How is a movie like that being produced when there's so many other more impactful stories of marginalization?
And her best friend is Black. And it's like, are you kidding me? This movie could have been made about her best friend, who seemed so awesome. And unfortunately, it was made about this, pretty white girl who just, her problem was tall. And I'm not denying that is definitely a problem that some girls might have, and they feel self-conscious about it. But there are just so many other important marginalized stories that are passed up.
Yeah.
Day after day after day, and so much is expected from marginalized communities. There's so much pressure on them being perfect, while at the same time, movies like this mediocre plot is being made, and it's just frustrating. So when I hear about these girls, and not just Arab Muslim girls, any marginalized girl, people of color, or Black women, anybody who feels like they cannot tell their story, it's like, please just do it. Just get out there. We need to hear your voices. We need to hear your stories in any media, in any form. And that's just what I would tell whoever's listening.
I couldn't agree more. And what's nice is that Netflix and Amazon and all of these places are not the mainstreams of where people are getting their media from now. Where it's Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. Apparently Gen Z is obsessed with TikTok. But it's all of these platforms where we're able to control the narrative and kind of have our voices be the ones that are dominating everything. Yeah. So I think it's super important too, because I'm sure your platform, rides on Instagram right now.
It's right now, yeah. Instagram is pretty much where I get the majority of my my followers, and I might break out into YouTube soon, but it's definitely.
You should.
Yeah, we'll see.
You definitely should.
We'll see, but it's definitely, that's where majority of the viewership is coming from, and
It's nice because you have all rights over it too.
Yeah,
So
and you have the control. And I think that whoever's listening, if you have that story and that desire and that passion to tell something, you have that control with YouTube, with Instagram, even with TikTok. There's so much expression that you can put out there
Yeah.
in just under a minute. Like, just do it.
absolutely. So let's backtrack a little and talk about your relationship with Dearborn. So I know you live in Texas right now, and you went to middle school and high school in Dearborn. So tell me about Huda at that time.
Yeah, so I was raised. I went to school in Ann Arbor, Lansing, predominantly like white communities, and I moved here when I was 10 or 11, 12. Yeah, I was 11 or 12, and I definitely could sense that I didn't quite fit in with the other girls in Dearborn. They were very much, were very. I don't know if the right word is cultural. My mom was very afraid for us to like fit in, and she wanted to make sure that we didn't really speak a lot of Arabic. I didn't really know a lot about what it meant to be Arab, even kind of growing up, because we stuck out like sore thumbs where I grew up as a young kid. And so when I came to Dearborn, it was completely the opposite. Everyone was so proud of being Arab. Everyone was like, they had this cultural identity that I felt was lacking in myself, and so I never felt like I fit in. But then I lived in Dearborn from like 12 to about 25, and so I have this like weird relationship, and I would say weird because I don't know how else to describe it. It's definitely like I'm a Dearborn girl, but I'm not from Dearborn, and so I'm not quite sure how I would talk about it, except that if I don't know, it's a very weird, strange relationship.
So why do you think your mom operated from a way of kind of protecting you a little bit from your culture, or not necessarily exposing to you as much as, let's say, if you lived in Dearborn?
It was definitely because she would feel, she had felt Islamophobia. Like there was definitely people who used to follow her home. She used to wear niqab, and she would fear for her life. And she didn't want us to be different because she didn't want us to be in danger. But we felt it anyway in every school that we went to, that we were definitely being treated differently. We were not being given the same kind of attention or the same kind of, I guess, respect that a lot of the other kids were being given. And you could tell, there's always just those little microaggressions, that made you feel other. And so it was very obvious. And just I didn't speak English until, because we were in a private school for kindergarten, and then we had to go to public school, and I didn't speak any English at that time, and people would make fun of me, and they would put me in ESL, and my parents were like, no, she's smart, we don't want her in ESL. And then they would force me to go into the regular classes, but I didn't speak English, and so that made me feel even more different. So my mom and dad were very like, that's it, we're not speaking any Arabic at home. They can't be in ESL. They equated, unfortunately, ESL with lower learning developments or something. So they just put us in this kind of mentality that we had to be, we had to fit in. And at the same time, though, they were we moved to Dearborn, and it was very much like, you're also proud of who you are. Like, also such a strange feeling. Like you felt like you were being pulled at both ends, and it was something you had to figure out. You had to figure it out.
So did you find it easier to fit in when you moved to Dearborn?
No. By then I was like, I know I'm Muslim. I love being Muslim. That was never a question. It was never about like, I was never ashamed about being Muslim, but it was about just, I didn't know the lingo. I didn't know a lot of the slang that was used. I didn't know, it was weird because I didn't know a lot of religious people. They were Muslim, but it was different. I don't know how to explain it. And so we would get called like boater and fob a lot, just because we wanted to like go pray in a room during school time. And it was, that made us feel a little different. Or I say us because my sisters, myself, I can only speak about my own experience. They might not have felt that. But yeah, so I don't know. It was interesting
because I saw you do a talk at U of M Dearborn last week, and you mentioned in the talk that somebody said something Islamophobic growing up when you were in Dearborn. And
Yeah.
I think I raised my hand and I wanted to make sure you meant Dearborn because I think you said Michigan. And I was like, oh, it probably happened in Lansing.
Yeah, Dearborn.
And I raised my hand and asked the question because I was just shocked.
Yeah, it was Dearborn. I mean, it was, walking down the street and somebody just pulled up, rolled down their window and just like, F you, Arab, and just screeched right off. Yeah.
How old were you at the time?
In college.
Wow.
Yeah, I was in college. And it was just on my way to work.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what's your relationship right now to Dearborn? So that was you growing up and you being a adolescent / college student too.
Yeah. Now it's, I moved away in 2011. And I if asked, I would probably not come back. But not because of anything except, I don't know. I just, like I said, I didn't feel like I'd fit in then, and I felt definitely like a stranger while I was living here. But if anybody ever said anything bad about Dearborn, like, no.
Yeah.
You're not allowed. You shut your mouth. Like I can say stuff about it, but you can't. If anybody ever tried to say anything like, are Dearborn girls really like that? Like, I don't know if you remember that show a long time ago, All American Muslim.
Yeah, I do.
And they were like, is that really what Dearborn is like? And I'd be like,
Yeah.
I didn't want to answer.
We all did that.
Sometimes. But then I was like, just don't talk to me about it because you can't. That's mine. Dearborn is mine.
Yeah.
So it's still that very strange feeling. My home is here. My mom is here. My sister's here. But that feeling of, I don't quite fit in here is still there.
It's funny because I think we all feel that, and I always say, like, my favorite thing about being a Dearborn girl is that I love being from a place where nobody feels like they fit in, but everyone actually fits in.
That's a nice way of putting it.
But, yeah, that is the Dearborn girl story.
I mean, that makes me feel better because I don't feel... I thought I was the only one. I really did. I felt like...
I think we all... But it's just something we don't have open conversations about sometimes. So it's nice to hear somebody say it out loud to kind of just like reinforce that and affirm that.
Yeah.
Okay, so Huda, what is next with your platform?
Well, I have a new book coming out, and the first book was a comic collection, but the second book is more of a chronological story. It's a graphic memoir about how I met my husband. It's called That Can Be Arranged, a Muslim love story.
I love that.
And I think it's hilarious. I've had to edit it and re-edit it, and every time I go back and reread the book, it cracks me up. So I hope other people find it as funny. And but it comes out March of 2020. I have a few more speaking events to go to, and I'm really excited about that. But yeah, that's for now. That's what we're doing. We're pitching the idea to different TV networks and film networks, and hopefully something will come of that. So please keep me in your prayers.
Amazing, inshallah.
Hopefully. But so right now I just keep making my comics and engaging with my fans and community and followers and people like you. And
amazing. Well, your fans and your community love you, and we thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you again for having me.